So I'm gonna backtrack a bit to the height of the Neocolonial Wars, when Pan-Oceania and Eugene were still fighting in the world of Paradiso. It was around this time that the Pan-Oceanian government suddenly lost contact with the Zulu Point research station. The security team sent to investigate discovered the staff dead, and the lab almost totally destroyed. As you can guess, they immediately suspected a Eugene intelligence operation, which Eugene denied at the time. But since they were still at war, such denials were seen as a deception. Around the same time this was going on, several ships throughout the Paradiso system detected a strange stellar phenomenon moving at astounding speeds, and leaving through a then unknown wormhole. With the disappearance of this object, and a whole war going on, not much attention was placed on it. It was something to investigate later, once one side or another claimed victory. Only years later was what really happened to the station pieced together. Apparently the probe, which was a technological artifact being studied at Zulu Point, had somehow been activated. It infected the research station systems, and used them to create a drone rigged with an impulsion engine and a trans-system emitter, and after killing all the scientists studying it, it escaped from the world, eventually going through a wormhole to a preset destination, and once through it signaled its creator, the Evolved Intelligence and its combined army. The combined army is, well, an army, composed of various alien races led by a being known as the Evolved Intelligence. This being, which many believe to be some form of super advanced AI, aimed to conquer every sentient race it encountered, and either put them under its control, or wipe them out if they weren't worth the trouble. And sadly for humanity, it had its sights set on them. And so on 60 NC, what became known as the First Paradiso Offensive began. The combined army fleet arrived through a previously unknown wormhole and attacked the system. The naval fleet stationed there, a rather small fleet due to the restrictions set by the previous peace treaty, was obliterated, and the alien fleet landed on Zulu Point and formed a beachhead. The forces on the planet were completely caught off guard, since all of their defensive efforts were focused on each other and not a potential alien invasion. Thankfully for humanity, the military forces on the planet didn't just lay down and die. Since the aliens made planetfall in Zulu Point, they were essentially in Pan-Oceanian territory, and the Paradiso Control Force, or PCR, did all they could to hold the aliens back. And they did surprisingly well, even against the Morat legions, Morats being a rather beefy alien race, who culturally are big fans of war. The PCR stood their ground for weeks, and although defeat was inevitable, they might have lasted a few weeks more if it wasn't for the Shavasti, a shape-shifting alien race that essentially collapsed the PCR from the inside through the impersonation of various individuals and a couple of successful assassinations. However, the weeks the PCR stood their ground wasn't in vain. It allowed millions to be evacuated from the world and gave time for the various forces of the human sphere to rally its forces. In this second Paradiso offensive, humanity struck back. Naval forces from various hypernations won victories in space and formed a blockade that prevented combined army reinforcements from reaching the planet. This Acheron blockade, as it was called, still being held to this day. Once the blockade was raised, the combined army forces in Paradiso pulled back from their hyper-aggressive campaign, consolidating the gains they had made, a state that Paradiso Coordinated Command believed only temporary. They were proven right, as despite their best efforts to prepare, they still struggled to contain the combined army when it boiled out of its strongholds months later. Multiple cities fell before their advances could be slowed. It was around the time of these attacks that an operation known as the Paradiso Affairs happened, which was a whole espionage thing I might get into later. But through this operation, O12 came into possession of an alien device known as the Black Box, an extremely advanced data storage device that has yet to this day been fully decrypted. But one bit of info they were able to get early on was information on another race that was at war with the combined army, as well as the location of a wormhole that could be used to contact them. There was some debate on the wisdom of contacting another potential enemy, but as was said even in your time, the enemy of my enemy is hopefully a potential friend. So O12 constructed facilities to open that wormhole and sent a message through. On August 9, 66 NC, a massive spaceship of alien design docked with the Evening Star Orbital, the Paradiso headquarters of O12, an event you can be sure scared the crap out of any who witnessed it. Many probably convinced that the hyperpowers of the human sphere were surrendering to the combined army. 90 minutes later, O12's Paradiso High Commissioner issued a public address, stating that the alien vessel was not from the combined army. It belonged to the Toha, another race at war with the Evolved Intelligence, who wished to join forces with humanity. After 3 weeks of negotiation, a treaty was signed, although many weeks of hashing out individual responsibilities and operation parameters needed to be done. It was during this hashing out that the Combined Army struck the station in a sneak attack. If the Combined Army had hoped to scare the Toha, their actions had the opposite effect. After the attack, Toha resolve only increased, and they quickly got over any misgivings they might have had over the alliance. The forces of the Toha poured into the battlefield of Paradiso, and with them came the end of the second offensive. The Paradiso battlefront was finally stabilized. Sadly, despite the aid of the Toha, the Combined Army still holds large swaths of territory that they are stubbornly holding on to, and the Acheron blockade is constantly being tested as the Combined Army tries to bring new forces into the system. It may be only a matter of time before a third offensive begins. Now you would think that with the alien army out there wanting to subjugate humanity, all the nations of the human sphere would have joined hands and united. Sadly, that's not the case. To many, Paradiso is a place systems away and has no effect on their lives. Their local issues and politics are a much greater concern, which means that governments, organizations, secret cabals, and all the other forms that people with a common goal get together are still at each other's throats, using methods such as murder, theft, aggressive espionage, sabotage, and kidnappings to gain any sort of advantage. The only group that seems to dream of a united human sphere is O12, the organization constantly trying to get their squabbling hyperpowers to agree on anything. A job I don't think may be possible. I mean, if a common enemy wasn't enough, then I doubt anything will be.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this latest video on the ongoing history of Infinity, the war game. If you like it, please like, subscribe, comment, press the little bell so you know where I post, etc. so that the YouTube guys know it exists and hopefully more people see this content. If you really like it and you're inclined, and if you have a little extra cash, just a little bit, please also consider sending a little money my way to my Patreon and my Ko-fi account. The extra money gives me a chance to work on these stories I love. Anyway, thanks for listening/watching, and see you next time.